The attack came without warning across 17 Council worlds simultaneously, and it came with a precision that made the greatest military minds in the galaxy look like children playing with toys. Danny Brooks was drinking coffee in the Meridian's small galley when every alarm on the ship began screaming at once. Ben Carter's voice crackled over the intercom from the bridge, reporting massive quantum distortions appearing throughout Council space. Ships were materializing from nowhere around major population centers and military installations. The energy signatures matched nothing in any database, but the hostile intent was unmistakable. Danny reached the bridge in time to see the first clear images of the attackers, transmitted from Council defense networks. Black ships the size of small moons hung in space above civilized worlds like storm clouds, bringing destruction. Their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them appear as holes cut from reality itself. Kate Sullivan ran scans on the enemy vessels while Ryan Martinez brought the Meridian to combat readiness. The alien ships defied easy analysis because they seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Their quantum signatures flickered in and out of detectable ranges as if the vessels could choose when to interact with the physical universe. From these nightmare ships poured swarms of mechanical creatures that Council databases quickly identified as void hunters. Ancient legends spoke of these machines that consumed entire civilizations before vanishing back into the darkness between galaxies. Most species had dismissed such stories as primitive superstitions until now. The void hunters looked like mechanical spiders the size of small buildings with limbs that could reconfigure themselves for different tasks. Their bodies incorporated technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics, while their quantum processors analyzed and adapted to every form of resistance they encountered. Council response was immediate and overwhelming. Fleet Admiral Zixhai coordinated the defense from his command ship, while battle groups jumped to hyperspace toward threatened worlds. Etherian vessels moved in perfect formations while quantum collective ships phased in and out of reality to strike at the invaders. Every tactic had been practiced countless times and executed with mathematical precision. The results were catastrophic for the defenders. Void Hunter quantum processors recorded every Council attack pattern and developed countermeasures faster than organic minds could react. When Etherian ships executed their traditional spiral formations, the mechanical swarms predicted their movements and positioned themselves to intercept. Quantum collective phase attacks failed as the hunters learned to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Battle. Group Epsilon, under the command of Captain Lisa Chang, engaged a void hunter fleet near the mining world of Kepler 7. Lisa had been promoted to ship command after her diplomatic service and brought 30 Council vessels against an equal number of enemy machines. The battle should have been evenly matched, but it turned into a slaughter within the first hour. The Council ships moved like a symphony orchestra, with every vessel playing its part in perfect harmony. Their formation attacks were beautiful to watch as energy beams created geometric patterns across the darkness of space. Missile volleys followed ballistic curves, calculated to mathematical perfection, while defensive screens deployed in optimal configurations. The Void Hunters studied this musical performance and then tore it apart with brutal efficiency. They identified the command ship by analyzing communication patterns and concentrated fire to sever the head from the body. They predicted formation movements and positioned themselves to turn Council coordination into a weakness rather than a strength. One by one, the ships of Battle Group Epsilon were systematically dismantled by an enemy that had faced similar tactics across countless galaxies. The hunters consumed the wreckage and fallen crew members to build more of themselves, while their quantum minds recorded every detail of Council military doctrine. Danny watched the destruction through long-range sensors and felt sick to his stomach. These were not random monsters attacking civilization, but something far worse. The Void Hunters were intelligent beyond measure, and they had been studying galactic society for months or maybe years before revealing themselves. Kate's earlier sensor readings suddenly made perfect sense. The quantum signatures she had detected during the military exercise had been scout ships observing Council capabilities. The electromagnetic pulse that jammed communications had probably revealed more about human technology than any formal intelligence gathering could have achieved. Emergency broadcasts flooded Council communication networks as world after world reported Void Hunter attacks. The mechanical swarm seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum damage, while avoiding heavily defended positions that might slow their advance. They had studied their enemies with the patience of machines that could think at light. Speed Admiral Zixai tried to coordinate a unified response, but his carefully planned strategies crumbled against an enemy that adapted faster than orders could be transmitted. The Talon Empire's disciplined formations became death traps when the hunters learned to predict their every movement. Even the Admiral's flagship found itself surrounded by mechanical spiders that had somehow anticipated his tactical decisions. Veltar from the Etherian Republic attempted to rally the scattered council fleets, but elegant formation flying meant nothing against opponents who had perfected counterformations across millions of years. The graceful aliens found their ships being herded into kill zones by hunters that understood their cultural preferences for beautiful maneuvers. The Quantum Collective tried using their probability calculations to predict hunter movements, but discovered that their enemies could manipulate quantum states in ways that made mathematical prediction impossible. Node 7749 reported that the hunters seemed to exist in multiple timeline states simultaneously, making them effectively immune to conventional tactical analysis. As panic spread through council space, a desperate message reached the human observation ship. Danny could hardly believe what he was hearing when the transmission came through. The Galactic Council was suspending humanity's probationary status and requesting immediate military assistance from Earth's defense forces. The same aliens who had mocked human clumsiness and dismissed their primitive technology were now begging for help. The creatures who had treated humans like dangerous children were asking those same children to help fight monsters that were destroying the galaxy's greatest civilizations. Danny looked at his small crew and wondered what they could possibly do against enemies that had defeated fleets of advanced warships. The Meridian carried simple projectile weapons and armor made from Earth steel. Their computers ran on quantum processors that Council engineers considered barely functional, but as he watched another Council battle group dissolve under void hunter assault, Danny began to understand something important. The mechanical enemies were winning because they could predict and counter every logical tactical response. They had spent eons fighting civilized species that followed military doctrine and strategic principles. What they had never encountered was an opponent that did not follow rules because they were too busy making up new ones. The Void Hunters were about to meet an enemy that would confuse their quantum processors and overload their prediction algorithms through sheer unpredictable creativity. Humanity was coming to war, and they were bringing chaos with them. Admiral Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the hastily converted cargo ship UES Dakota and watched the most unusual fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Around her floated vessels that had never been designed for combat but now carried weapons welded to their hulls by desperate human engineers working around the clock. Mining ships bristled with missile pods salvaged from decommissioned military vessels. Civilian transports had been fitted with particle beam arrays that their power systems could barely support. Even luxury cruise ships had been pressed into service with their passenger lounges converted into fighter bays. The human defense fleet numbered just over 200 ships, and none of them looked like proper warships by Council standards. They had been assembled in 3 weeks using whatever humanity could spare from Earth's orbital facilities and the few colonies that had managed to establish themselves among nearby stars. Jake Morrison commanded a converted research vessel called the UES Explorer that now mounted experimental weapons designed by human scientists who thought the laws of physics were more like friendly suggestions. His crew included volunteers from Earth's space program who had never fired a shot in anger but were ready to learn on the job. Ryan Martinez had been given command of a fast courier ship that he had personally modified, with engine systems that violated several Council safety regulations. The little vessel could accelerate at rates that would kill most alien species, but humans in pressure suits could survive the crushing forces for short periods. Lisa Chang commanded a mining barge that had been fitted with industrial cutting lasers powerful enough to slice through asteroid rock. The weapons had never been tested against enemy armor, but Lisa figured that metal was metal regardless of who built it. Her crew consisted mostly of miners and construction workers who knew how to operate heavy machinery under dangerous conditions. The plan that Admiral Sarah had proposed to the desperate Council leadership was simple in concept. but terrifying in execution. Instead of trying to match Void Hunter precision with their own disciplined formations, humans would do the exact opposite. They would create tactical chaos so complete that no quantum computer could predict their next move. Council military observers had declared the strategy impossible to coordinate and guaranteed to result in friendly fire incidents. Admiral Zixhai personally warned Sarah that her fleet would destroy itself through lack of discipline long before engaging the enemy. Even sympathetic aliens like Veltar expressed serious doubts about human methods. Sarah understood their concerns, but she also knew something they did not. Humans had been fighting chaotic battles since they first picked up sticks and stones. Every human conflict, from ancient tribal warfare to modern space, skirmishes had involved improvisation and split-second decision-making under impossible conditions. The first test came when Void Hunter scouts detected the approaching human fleet and moved to intercept them with a force of mechanical spiders, supported by several of the massive black ships. Council observers prepared to watch another slaughter as the primitive human vessels faced opponents that had destroyed far more advanced fleets. What happened next confused every tactical computer in both fleets. Jake Morrison's research ship suddenly accelerated directly toward the largest enemy vessel while broadcasting what appeared to be surrender messages on all frequencies. The Void Hunters analyzed this behavior and determined that the human commander was attempting some form of psychological warfare. They prepared countermeasures for a suicide attack. Instead, Jake's ship performed a gravity-assisted slingshot around a nearby moon that sent it flying perpendicular to its original course. The maneuver made no tactical sense and served no obvious strategic purpose, but it put the Explorer in perfect position to launch missiles at an enemy formation that had moved to intercept Jake's predicted suicide run. Lisa Chang used her mining barge like a battering ram and charged straight into the middle of a Void Hunter formation while cutting everything around her with industrial lasers. The mechanical spiders tried to surround and disable her ship, but Lisa's crew started dumping refined metals from their cargo holds, creating a cloud of reflective particles that scattered enemy sensor beams. Ryan Martinez pushed his little courier ship beyond all reasonable limits and began flying patterns that looked like someone having a seizure in 3 dimensions. His course changes were so rapid and random that Void Hunter targeting computers could not establish a firing solution. Meanwhile, Ryan was launching every missile he carried in apparently random directions that somehow managed to hit enemy ships. The battle spread across an entire star system as more human vessels joined the fight using tactics that defied military logic. Captain Danny Brooks arrived with the Meridian and immediately began broadcasting Earth music on all frequencies, while Kate Sullivan used her experimental scanner array to emit quantum static that interfered with Void Hunter coordination. Network's Ben Carter had discovered that his translation software could be weaponized by feeding it contradictory input commands. The resulting signal output created electromagnetic noise that overloaded enemy communication systems and made their quantum processors waste computing power trying to decode meaningless data. Alex Rivera commanded a converted police cutter that he flew like a stunt pilot at an air show. His cybernetic arm interfaced directly with the ship's weapon systems, allowing him to fire in directions that no organic pilot could have managed. The combination of human intuition and mechanical precision created firing patterns that confused every tactical prediction algorithm. For the first time in eons, the Void Hunters found themselves facing something their quantum minds could not process. Human tactics made no sense because they were not really tactics at all. They were pure improvisation, based on split-second decisions that even the humans making them could not have predicted in advance. The mechanical spiders began making mistakes as their processors overloaded, trying to calculate responses to actions that followed no logical pattern. Ships collided with each other when their coordination networks were jammed by human electronic warfare. Weapon systems misfired when targeting computers could not track opponents who changed direction every few seconds for no apparent reason. Council observers watched in amazement as humanity's supposed weakness became their greatest strength. The same unpredictable behavior that had caused so many accidents during diplomatic ceremonies was now destroying enemies that had conquered countless galaxies. Admiral Sarah Kim coordinated the chaos through intuition rather than rigid command structures. She gave her captains general objectives and trusted them to find their own ways to achieve those goals. The result was organized disorder on a scale that no computer could model or predict. As the battle reached its climax, Sarah realized that humans had found their place in the galactic community. They would never be the most advanced species or the most disciplined military force, but they could do something that no other civilization had managed. They could be beautifully and completely unpredictable when survival depended on it. The Void Hunters retreated for the first time in their ancient existence, and humanity had earned the respect of their alien allies through the most human method possible. They had won by refusing to play by anyone else's rules. 6 months had passed since humanity received probationary membership in the Galactic Council, and Captain Danny Brooks was getting tired of being treated like a child. His ship, the U.S. Meridian, hung in space watching the biggest military exercise in galactic history, and all they could do was observe. The Meridian was not much to look at compared to the sleek Council warships surrounding them. It had been built in Earth's orbital shipyards using human technology that the aliens considered primitive. The hull was thick and blocky where alien ships were graceful curves. The weapons were simple projectile systems while other species used exotic energy beams and quantum torpedoes. Kate Sullivan worked at her engineering station trying to keep their experimental scanner array from overheating again. She had designed the system herself using a combination of human intuition and salvaged alien technology. The Council engineers who looked at her designs always shook their heads, or made the alien equivalent of head shaking. They said her approach was inefficient and unreliable. Ryan Martinez sat at the pilot station watching the alien formations with professional interest. The Council fleets moved like dancers performing a ballet that had been practiced for thousands of years. Every ship knew exactly where to be at every moment. Their formations were mathematical perfection, translated into space combat. Ben Carter monitored communications from his station and tried to keep up with the rapid flow of tactical data between Council ships. The aliens used compression algorithms and shorthand codes that packed enormous amounts of information into brief transmissions. Even with translation software, Ben struggled to follow their conversations. The exercise involved 12 different Council fleets, representing the major military powers of the galaxy. Etherian ships moved like schools of fish darting between the heavier formations of Talon Empire dreadnoughts. Quantum collective vessels appeared and disappeared as they tested their phasing technology. Zephyrian cruisers glowed like stars as their bioluminescent hulls pulsed with tactical information. Admiral Zixai commanded the exercise from his flagship, and his voice carried over the General Communications Channel. The Talon Empire Admiral made no effort to hide his opinion of human observers. Every few minutes he would make some comment about keeping the humans at a safe distance so they would not interfere with real military operations. The mock battle reached its climax when the Council fleets engaged simulated enemy forces using holographic projections. The coordination was flawless as hundreds of ships maneuvered through complex attack patterns. Energy beams lanced through space in perfectly calculated firing sequences. Everything proceeded according to plans that had been refined through centuries of military tradition. That was when Kate's scanner array decided to malfunction in spectacular fashion. She had been trying to get better resolution on the quantum signatures she kept detecting at the edge of sensor range. The array was running beyond safe parameters when it suddenly overloaded and sent out an electromagnetic pulse that jammed communications across half the exercise. Area Council ships found themselves cut off from their command networks just as they were executing their most complex maneuvers. Etherian vessels collided with each other as their formation flying algorithms failed. A quantum collective ship materialized inside a Zephyrian cruiser's shield envelope, causing both vessels to trigger automatic emergency protocols. Ryan tried to move the Meridian out of the way, but his unconventional piloting style made things worse. He executed a spiral dive that took them directly through a Talon Empire battle formation. The massive dreadnoughts had to break formation to avoid the small human ship that was weaving between them like a leaf in a hurricane. Ben attempted damage control by broadcasting apologies on all frequencies, but his translation software kept converting his words into inappropriate alien curse words. Several species took offense and began demanding explanations in languages that the human communication system could not even recognize. The chaos lasted for 20 minutes before Council engineers managed to restore their communication networks and get the exercise back on track. By then, Admiral Zixai was Furious and several other fleet commanders were demanding that humans be banned from future military exercises. Kate felt terrible about the malfunction, but something bothered her about the data she had collected before the overload. Her scanner array had detected quantum fluctuations that suggested massive objects moving at the edge of sensor range. The energy signatures were unlike anything in Council databases, and they seemed to be observing the exercise with great interest. She tried to explain her findings to Captain Brooks, who listened carefully and decided to report the anomalies to Council Command. Danny knew the aliens already considered humans unreliable, but this might be important enough to risk further embarrassment. Admiral Zixhai's response was predictably dismissive. The Talon commander stated that human sensors were obviously malfunctioning again, and that Council technology would have detected any real threats in the area. He suggested that humans focus on learning basic spaceship operations before trying to contribute to galactic defense. Other Council officers were more polite but equally skeptical. They pointed out that the galaxy's most advanced sensor networks continuously monitored space around their territory. If something dangerous existed in the outer void, their systems would have found it long. The Quantum Collective ran probability calculations that showed less than a 1% chance of Kate's readings representing actual threats. Node 7749 explained that human technology was simply not sophisticated enough to distinguish between real contacts and sensor noise at extreme ranges. Even Veltar, from the Etherian Republic, gently suggested that humans might be seeing patterns where none existed. The elegant alien reminded them that space was full of natural phenomena that could confuse primitive scanning equipment. Kate accepted the criticism, but continued analyzing her data privately. The quantum signatures had been too regular to be natural phenomena and too large to be space debris. Something massive had been watching the exercise, and she was sure of it. Danny supported his engineers' concerns, but knew they could not push the issue without more evidence. The Meridian was already on thin ice with Council Command after the communication jamming incident. Another false alarm would probably get them banned from future exercises entirely. As the human ship prepared to return to Earth, Kate took one last long-range scan of the outer system. For just a moment, her displays showed contacts moving in the deep darkness between stars. Then the signals vanished as if someone had thrown a switch to turn off running lights on invisible ships. The exercise had been a disaster for human relations with the Council, but it had served another purpose entirely. Hidden observers in the cosmic void had learned everything they needed to know about Council military capabilities. Ancient machines that had slumbered between galaxies for millions of years were finally ready to wake up. The Watchers had seen the perfect coordination of Council fleets and understood how to exploit it. They had observed the mathematical precision of alien tactics and calculated ways to turn that precision against itself. Most importantly, they had identified the weakest member of the galactic community. Humans with their clumsy technology and unpredictable behavior would be dealt with first. The ancient enemy had faced countless civilizations across the eons, but they had always been organized and logical opponents. These new creatures called humans might require a different approach, but they would fall like all the others. In the darkness between stars, something vast began to move toward the light. Jake Morrison stood in front of the massive viewing window aboard the Galactic Council station and watched ships from 100 different worlds dock at the enormous structure. The station itself looked like a giant metal flower floating in space around the planet Kepler Prime. Each petal of this flower housed different alien species and their governments. Today would mark the first time humans had ever set foot in this place. Lisa Chang walked up beside him, carrying a briefcase full of documents and data chips. She looked nervous but tried to hide it behind her professional smile. Alex Rivera stood near the door watching everything with the sharp eyes of a security expert. His cybernetic arm hummed softly as it ran diagnostic checks on itself. They had traveled for 6 months to reach this place. Earth had finally made contact with the greater galactic community, and now they needed to prove they belonged here. The 3 humans represented all of humanity in this moment, and Jake felt the weight of that responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. A tall blue creature with 4 arms approached them. It moved with the fluid grace of someone who had never known gravity stronger than a feather. Its skin seemed to glow with its own inner light, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like music played on crystal bells. The creature introduced itself as Veltar from the Etherian Republic. It explained that the council would hear their presentation in 1 hour. All the major species would be there to decide if humans deserved a place among the stars. Veltar's manner was polite, but Jake could sense doubt in those large silver eyes. The presentation hall was bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. Thousands of beings filled seats that stretched up toward a ceiling lost in shadows. Some creatures floated in the air, while others sat in pools of liquid. A few species seemed to be made of pure energy and flickered like flames in special containment fields. Jake activated the holographic display system and immediately knew something was wrong. Instead of showing Earth's greatest achievements, the display began showing images of human wars. Ancient battles filled the air above them with violence and destruction. Roman legions marched across the hologram while World War bombers dropped their deadly cargo on cities below. Lisa jumped up to help, but her elbow knocked over her cup of synthetic coffee. The brown liquid splashed across the crystalline form of a Zephyrian delegate. The alien's bioluminescent skin began to flicker wildly as the coffee interfered with its natural light patterns. Other Zephyrians in the audience started flashing in sympathy, creating a disco effect across their entire section. Alex tried to reach the control panel to shut down the malfunctioning display, but his cybernetic arm triggered every security sensor in the room. Alarms began blaring and red warning lights bathed the entire hall in an angry glow. Automated defense systems came online and started tracking Alex's movements with targeting lasers. The chaos continued for several long minutes while Jake frantically tried to regain control of the presentation. Finally, he managed to shut down the holographic system, but the damage was already done. The Great Hall buzzed with alien conversations in a dozen different languages. Most of it sounded like laughter. Veltar stood up and called for order. The Etherean's voice carried easily through the massive space, and gradually the other delegates quieted down. A new figure approached the central podium, and Jake recognized it as Node 7749 from the Quantum Collective. This species looked like geometric shapes made of living metal that constantly rearranged themselves into new patterns. Node 7749's voice came from speakers built into its body and sounded like computer-generated speech. It announced that the Quantum Collective had run probability calculations on human behavior based on what they had just witnessed. The results showed a species that was accident-prone, technologically unreliable, and generally unsuited for advanced galactic society. Another delegate stood up from the section reserved for the Talon Empire. Admiral Zixai was a reptilian creature with golden scales and eyes like burning coals. The admiral's voice carried the authority of a military commander who had fought in 100 battles across the galaxy. Zixai stated that humans appeared to lack the discipline and precision required for spacefaring civilizations. Jake felt his heart sinking as more delegates voiced similar concerns. The crystalline hegemony worried about human clumsiness around their delicate technology. The Voidwalkers questioned whether humans could handle the mental challenges of interstellar travel. Even the usually friendly botanical collective expressed doubts about human competence. But then something unexpected happened. A very old voice spoke from the shadows at the back of the hall. The Ancient Ones rarely participated in council debates, but when they did speak, everyone listened. This particular ancient had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across millions of years. The Ancient One said that perhaps the humans deserved a chance to prove themselves. Many species had appeared clumsy during their first contact with the galactic community. The key was to observe how they adapted and learned from their mistakes. Humans showed creativity in their response to problems, even if their methods seemed unconventional. After several hours of debate, the council reached a decision. Humans would receive probationary membership in the Galactic Council. They could establish embassies and trade relationships, but would have limited access to advanced technologies. Military cooperation would be restricted until humans proved they could handle such responsibilities. Jake accepted the decision with as much grace as he could manage. It was not what they had hoped for, but at least it was a beginning. Humans now had a foot in the door of galactic civilization. As the three humans prepared to leave the station, Jake noticed something that troubled him. Deep space monitoring displays around the station showed strange readings from the galaxy's outer rim. Energy signatures that did not match any known technology flickered across the screens before disappearing again. When Jake asked about these readings, the station technicians dismissed them as sensor glitches. They assured him that nothing dangerous could exist in the empty void between galaxies. The Council's advanced sensors would detect any real threats long before they became a problem. Jake nodded and smiled, but something about those flickering energy signatures bothered him. In the empty darkness between the stars, something ancient was stirring. Something that had been waiting for a very long time was finally ready to make its move. The Galactic Council's time of peace was about to end, and they did not even know it yet. The Void Hunter mothership emerged from quantum space like a nightmare made manifest above Earth itself, and it was larger than anything humanity had ever seen. The ancient vessel stretched across hundreds of kilometers of space with a hull that seemed to devour light and hope in equal measure. From its cavernous bays poured mechanical horrors beyond, counting as the enemy prepared to end human civilization forever. Admiral Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of her flagship surrounded by the scattered remnants of both human and council fleets. The final battle had come to humanity's home system, and every ship that could still fight had gathered for one last desperate stand. Earth's orbital defenses added their firepower to the mixed fleet, but everyone knew it would not be enough. The Council survivors fought with grim determination beside their human allies. Admiral Zixhai had brought the remaining Talon Empire dreadnoughts into formation with converted human cargo ships. Veltar commanded Etherian cruisers that flew wing to wing with Earth's police cutters. Even the logical quantum collective had learned to appreciate human unpredictability and coordinated their phase attacks with Jake Morrison's impossible maneuvers. Captain Danny Brooks led a squadron of fighters that included everything from military interceptors to civilian racing ships piloted by volunteers who had never seen combat. Kate Sullivan had distributed her quantum static generators to dozens of human vessels, creating an electronic warfare network that stretched across the entire battle zone. The Void Hunters found their communication systems jammed by a chaos of overlapping signals. Ben Carter had become the voice of human resistance by broadcasting Earth music on all frequencies during the fighting. The songs served no tactical purpose, but somehow they helped human crews coordinate their actions through shared cultural references that no alien computer could understand. Classical symphonies mixed with rock anthems and folk ballads created an audio chaos that became the soundtrack of survival. Lisa Chang had converted her mining barge into a mobile weapons platform that bristled with every type of armament human industry could produce. She flew directly into the thickest enemy formations while her crew fired industrial tools and military weapons with equal enthusiasm. The barge had no business surviving in a space battle, but human stubbornness kept it fighting when logic said it should have been destroyed. Our Ryan Martinez pushed his courier ship beyond all possible limits as he led attack runs against the mothership's weapon arrays. His impossible flying patterns confused every targeting system the Void Hunters possessed, while inspiring other human pilots to attempt equally insane maneuvers. The small ship became a symbol of human defiance, dancing between death rays that could have vaporized it instantly. Alex Rivera coordinated human ground defenses as Void Hunter boarding parties attempted to land on Earth's surface. His cybernetic arm commanded orbital weapons while his human intuition predicted enemy landing sites. The combination of mechanical precision and organic creativity created defensive patterns that turned attempted invasions into killing grounds. Jake Morrison found himself at the center of the battle when his research ship was caught between massive enemy formations. Instead of retreating, he did something that no council commander would have attempted. He deliberately overloaded his experimental drive core and used the resulting explosion to tear a hole in space-time itself. The quantum detonation created a cascade effect that spread through the enemy fleet like wildfire. Void Hunter ships that existed partially outside normal reality found themselves pulled back into physical space, where conventional weapons could destroy them. The mothership itself flickered as its exotic matter hull struggled to maintain coherence. Sarah Kim saw the opportunity and coordinated every remaining human vessel for one final assault. She gave the simplest possible order over all communication channels. Every ship was to attack the mothership, using whatever method seemed most likely to cause maximum damage. No formations, no coordinated timing, just pure human aggression directed at a common target. The result was beautiful chaos on an interstellar scale. Hundreds of human ships converged on the ancient enemy from every possible angle, while broadcasting Earth music and jamming enemy communications. Mining ships fired industrial lasers while luxury yachts launched tourism missiles converted into weapons. Police cutters used their arrest beams to try pulling pieces off the enemy hull while research vessels deployed scientific instruments as electronic warfare devices. Council ships joined the assault using their own weapons in support of human tactics they could never have imagined. Etherian vessels provided precise covering fire while human ships created controlled chaos. Talon Empire dreadnoughts delivered massive bombardments while converted human transports darted between their shots like insects around giants. The Void Hunters fought back with desperate fury as their ancient mothership began to buckle under the impossible assault. Their quantum processors overloaded, trying to track hundreds of targets that followed no predictable patterns. Weapon systems designed to counter logical military formations could not cope with attacks that made no tactical sense. Ben Carter's music broadcasts reached a crescendo as every human ship in the fleet began playing the same song simultaneously. The melody was simple enough for aliens to recognize, but complex enough to carry emotional meaning that transcended species barriers. Council crews found themselves fighting harder as the music reminded them what they were defending. The mothership's hull began to crack as quantum detonations spread through its exotic matter structure. Ancient systems that had conquered galaxies started failing as they encountered something their creators had never anticipated. Human unpredictability had become a weapon that could destroy enemies who thought they had seen everything the universe could offer. Jake Morrison's sacrifice had opened a wound in space-time that continued to grow as more human ships followed his example. Captains who had never been soldiers made the choice to ram their vessels into enemy weapons in order to clear the way for their friends. Each act of heroism was unique and impossible to predict, making it impossible for the Void Hunters to develop effective countermeasures as the battle reached its final moments. Sarah Kim realized that humanity had found its true place in the galaxy. They would never be the most advanced species or the most disciplined military, but they could do something no other civilization had achieved. They could win through pure creative chaos when survival was on the line. The mothership collapsed into the quantum rift that Jake had created, taking the last of the Void Hunters with it back into the cosmic void where they belonged. The ancient enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations had been defeated by the youngest species in the galaxy through methods that defied all military logic. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and diplomats prepared new treaties, Sarah looked out at Earth hanging blue and beautiful in space. The Galactic Council would offer humanity full membership with complete access to advanced technology and military cooperation. But more importantly, they had learned to respect human nature in all its chaotic glory. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not despite their unpredictable behavior, but because of it. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent was one who refused to follow the rules because they were too busy writing new ones in the heat of battle. The galaxy was safe, and humans had proven that being different was not the same as being wrong.